Just 1 hour ago, Buckingham Palace confirmed what millions feared. Prince William has received a new medical diagnosis that could alter the monarchy's future forever. The announcement, delivered in a solemn royal bulletin, shook the nation and left an eerie silence across newsrooms and homes alike. Aides described the atmosphere inside the palace as frozen. With King Charles still in recovery and Catherine already carrying immense public weight, the question arises, can the monarchy withstand another blow? Stay with us as we uncover the emotional, political, and deeply personal truth behind this tragic royal revelation. The palace statement that shattered the silence. At exactly 9 a.m. on October 29, 2025, the iron gates of Buckingham Palace opened without warning. Reporters, who had been camped out for hours in the autumn chill, scrambled as a royal press officer emerged, face pale, folder in hand. "With the King's full knowledge," she began, "we confirm His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales is confronting a serious health challenge." It was a 42-word statement, but it shattered the peace of a nation of 67 million. No questions were taken. No elaboration offered. The message, though brief, signaled the unthinkable. Prince William, the steady heartbeat of the monarchy, was unwell. Within minutes, cafes went quiet. Phones buzzed across the UK, pushing breaking news alerts to millions. At 9:17 a.m., BBC interrupted its programming. Sky News followed seconds later. In Manchester, a commuter fainted after reading the alert on her phone. In Leeds, a school cancelled its morning assembly. By 10:30 a.m., the top trending hashtags on X, formerly Twitter, were hashtag Pray for William, hashtag Future King, and hashtag Catherine Strong. This wasn't just news. It was a collective pause. The kind that occurs when something sacred is under threat. Behind the scenes, royal aides were clearly shaken. A junior press assistant reportedly fumbled her speech. A more senior official refused to answer direct questions, something rarely seen in British royal protocol. One witness described the atmosphere as grave, funereal, but without death. The gravity wasn't about illness alone. It was about uncertainty, because this wasn't just a health update. It was the first public signal that the monarchy's future might need immediate redefinition. Social media continued its spiral. Within 2 hours, over 19 million impressions were recorded across major platforms. Memes were replaced with candle emojis. Photos of William hugging war veterans, laughing with children, and walking beside Princess Diana resurfaced with heartbreaking speed. The timeline had fractured, and in the digital and real world alike, the people of the United Kingdom, and even the Commonwealth, collectively asked the same question. If William falters, what becomes of the crown? But before the palace released its chilling confirmation, the warning signs were already showing, hidden in plain sight. The night before the announcement, an eerie stillness cloaked Windsor Castle. Inside its stone walls, the man known to millions as the future king had already made a quiet exit, unnoticed by most, but not by all. What happened between sunset and sunrise tells a deeper, more haunting story. One that reveals Prince William's state of mind before the world knew he was slipping. William's mysterious departure. The evening of October 28, 2025, began without incident at Windsor Castle. The staff noted no unusual changes until 8:41 p.m., when Prince William was seen quietly exiting through a rarely used side gate. His usual convoy was absent. No flashing lights, no security chase cars, just a single discreet black Range Rover. A kitchen aide later remarked, "It wasn't sorrow on his face. It was burden. That kind of weight," she said, "only shows up before war or history." Back in William's private study, clues remained. Aides found the room unusually disheveled. Scattered documents, a still-burning candle, and an open notebook lay on the desk. On top of it, a photo of Princess Diana, her 1993 portrait framed in silver. Next to it, a handwritten note reading, "Let the weight pass through me, not to them." Aides whispered among themselves. "He's made a decision," one said. "The kind people write about for generations." Whatever was coming, William had already faced it alone. At Adelaide Cottage, just 12 miles away, Princess Catherine sat in silence. A lone teacup sat on the table, cold, untouched. Her eyes fixed on the garden beyond the glass. She whispered, "Please let him be all right." The children were asleep upstairs. George had asked earlier, "Is Papa flying again?" Catherine didn't answer. In that moment, the future queen wasn't regal. She was simply a wife, waiting, praying, powerless. And still, despite the fear, she never left the house. Later that night, security teams noted William's return at 1:07 a.m. No one greeted him, no conversation. He walked straight to his quarters, locked the door, and remained inside until sunrise. Whatever resolve he'd come to, it was final. The stage was set, and by the time the palace confirmed his condition at 9 a.m., it was clear. William had already surrendered something, if not to fate, then to truth. The kingdom would only learn later what that surrender cost him. The weight of leadership had taken its toll, but no one expected how deeply. For months, insiders had noticed the change in William. His thinning frame, his quieter tone, his shorter public appearances. The signs were there, but no one dared say it aloud. That silence ended when private medical visits became impossible to hide. And what the world learned next made the palace's brief statement feel like a thunderclap. The diagnosis, while unnamed, left no doubt. Prince William was seriously ill. The diagnosis they couldn't hide anymore. By early September 2025, palace insiders were already whispering. Prince William's public appearances had grown briefer. At a September 12th charity gala, photographers noted how his tailored suit sagged around his shoulders. His complexion, once ruddy and sun-kissed, appeared pallid under the cameras. Stress, the palace insisted, just fatigue. But those closest to him knew better. His RAF regiment buddies, especially one named Flight Lieutenant David Harwood, confided to tabloids he wasn't eating, he was surviving. Photos surfaced online of William entering a private clinic in central London. Time-stamped October 3rd, 11:52 p.m., they showed black SUVs flanking the rear entrance. Security blocked all views, but the sight of Princess Catherine exiting the vehicle hours later confirmed suspicion. Tabloids speculated wildly: autoimmune disease, cancer, stress-induced collapse. But the palace remained silent until October 29th, when they could no longer afford to be. That word, serious, hung in the air like a funeral bell. Sources confirmed the diagnosis had come weeks earlier. The decision to delay public release was strategic but unsustainable, especially once photos of royal bodyguards at St. Bartholomew's Hospital on October 10th leaked. Public pressure mounted. Health ministers were questioned. And even opposition MPs subtly urged transparency in matters of constitutional succession. No one said the word abdication, but it hovered, unspoken, in every press briefing and op-ed. For the monarchy, silence had become a risk. not a shield. Family began arriving in London discreetly. Princess Anne, stoic as ever, was seen at a side entrance of Clarence House. Even Prince Andrew, usually distant from court affairs, appeared at Balmoral, then in London 2 days later. The gravity was clear. William wasn't just ill, he was central to the Crown's immediate future. His condition, though unnamed, now defined the royal calendar. Because when the next heartbeat of a monarchy falters, an entire realm holds its breath. Catherine's silent vigil at home. In the quiet halls of Adelaide Cottage, Princess Catherine found herself alone with the weight of a nation. On the night of October 28, 2025, while the country braced for updates on Prince William's condition, Catherine chose to sleep not in her private quarters, but in the children's nursery. Prince George, wide-eyed and sensing unease, asked gently, "Is Papa sick?" Catherine replied with a calm that belied her fear. "He's resting." There were no headlines, no cameras, just a mother holding the world together for her children. She did not sleep. Instead, Catherine moved between the cribs of George, 12, Charlotte, 10, and Louis, 7, whispering prayers she never thought she'd need to say. On the small wooden desk in the corner sat a candle, one she had lit herself at 6:15 a.m., echoing a tradition once upheld by Princess Diana during times of royal anxiety. The flame flickered gently, casting shadows across the nursery wall. Nearby, a framed photograph of William as a helicopter pilot reminded her of his courage and his fragility. By morning, aides described her as a fortress. While her eyes carried the weight of dread, her actions were precise, deliberate. She ensured the children were dressed, fed, and shielded from the chaos brewing beyond the palace gates. Her only private moment came in the royal chapel shortly after sunrise. She knelt at the same marble step where Diana once prayed during Charles's 1990 skiing accident. Hands clasped tightly, whispering, "Let him find his way back." Outside, photographers captured a single image. Catherine walking George hand in hand through the mist-covered garden. The look on her face, equal parts composed and hollow, circulated across the world within 43 minutes. Catherine Strong trended in 17 countries, yet inside the palace, there was no triumph, only survival. As the nation looked to Catherine for emotional strength, another royal voice stepped forward. But this time, it wasn't the poised Princess of Wales, it was a grieving father. One who rarely showed emotion, but now stood before millions, exposing his most vulnerable self. King Charles, who had always kept the crown above all else, prepared to address the world. And for the first time since his own coronation, he would speak not as a monarch, but as a father in pain. King Charles breaks royal tradition with emotion. The evening of October 29, 2025, marked a turning point. At precisely 8 p.m., the BBC interrupted its programming for a surprise national address from King Charles III. Viewers expected a formal statement, perhaps delivered by an aide, but what they saw left them stunned. The king appeared alone, without royal regalia, standing in the Windsor drawing room, face pale, hands shaking slightly. "My son has shown courage beyond measure," he began, voice already cracking on the first line. It was the first time since his 2023 coronation that Charles addressed the public with raw emotion. He continued, "This family has known joy, sorrow, and sacrifice. But nothing prepares a father to witness his son suffer in silence." His eyes welled, and then, against all protocol, King Charles paused, lifted a handkerchief, and wiped away a tear. There was no palace pageantry, no pre-recorded edits, just the painful honesty of a man who had buried too much emotion for too long. Behind him stood Queen Camilla, dressed in black, unusually quiet. She said nothing, her face unreadable. In past addresses, she was always at Charles's side, contributing a line or a nod. Tonight, she was barely acknowledged. Insiders later revealed tension between them over how involved Camilla should be during this crisis. One royal aide noted privately, "She looked like a statue, present, but not part of it." For viewers, it was clear that this moment belonged to Charles alone. As the king's 5-minute speech concluded, he looked directly into the camera and said, "Even in his silence, William unites us. Let us now stand for him as he has always stood for us." The screen went black, followed by a solemn version of "God Save the King." The nation, already breathless, exhaled in grief and unity. For the first time, Charles wasn't the crown. He was simply William's father. The king's emotional honesty struck a deep national chord. But grief does not pause for titles. As Charles's address ended, Britain moved from shock to collective mourning. Bells tolled in towns large and small, church pews filled with strangers kneeling side by side. The love for William wasn't just symbolic, it was personal. He had touched thousands in real life. Now, those very people were flooding the streets, sharing memories, and lifting candles in his name. The entire kingdom was grieving. A nation in mourning and prayer. At precisely 12 noon on October 30th, 2025, church bells rang across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. It wasn't just the major cathedrals. Small-town churches and village chapels joined in unison. Buses paused. School children stood with heads bowed. In Manchester, a shopkeeper closed early. In Devon, a farmer tied a blue ribbon to his tractor. It wasn't an order, it was instinct. The country was united in prayer, not for a monarch, but for the man who was supposed to be its future. Outside the gates of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, flowers formed rivers of color. Some bouquets bore notes. "Come back to us, William. For our future king, he is the bridge." Many left small photos of William laughing with citizens. One note from a child read, "Thank you for visiting our school in 2022. You said I was brave. Be brave too." It was a mosaic of national love, pieced together by people who had felt his presence personally. Television networks across the UK played tribute reels. One showed William hugging a widow of a 2021 Afghanistan veteran. Another showed him laughing with school children in Leeds, rolling up his sleeves to help build a playground. News anchors broke down describing his genuine nature. A former soldier recalled, "He didn't act royal. He just listened. The media no longer referred to him as just Prince William. Now, he was our William." In a quiet corner of Nottingham, an elderly woman placed a candle on her windowsill. She told reporters, "He reminded me of Diana. Not in looks, but in heart." Those words echoed throughout the nation. This wasn't just a health crisis, it was a moment of national identity in flux. William had become more than the heir. He had become the embodiment of hope. Harry's quiet crisis in California. In Montecito, where golden light falls gently through eucalyptus trees, Prince Harry sat frozen on his living room couch. The time was 6 a.m., California time, and British news coverage had just announced William's condition. Meghan, still in her robe, glanced at Harry. "You should call," she said gently, nodding toward the phone. He didn't move. In his hand, he already held it, thumb hovering over William's number. But the screen stayed dark. His face, pale and conflicted, betrayed a storm years in the making. The last time Harry and William had spoken meaningfully was over 3 years ago, at the unveiling of the Diana statue in July 2021. Since then, words had been few, and walls had grown tall. The memory of their childhood, matching outfits, family holidays, chasing each other through Highgrove Gardens, clashed now with the silence that had replaced them. Meghan placed a hand on his shoulder. "He's still your brother," she said softly. "And this might be the moment that matters most." Harry stepped outside. The California morning still cool. He walked past the hydrangeas, past the bench where Archie once played. He stared at the hills and whispered, "I should have called sooner." But grief has a strange rhythm. Even when you want to run into the fire, pride and pain hold you back. He paced the driveway for 20 minutes, phone in hand. Then, without pressing send, he slipped it back into his pocket and looked up at the sky, silent. Back inside, Meghan offered tea. Harry didn't drink it. Instead, he sat at the piano where his mother once taught him the opening notes of Clair de Lune. He played a few hesitant chords. "I don't know if he'd even want to hear from me," he said. Meghan replied, "That doesn't matter. It's not about who's right. It's about not losing the chance." But the moment passed, and the call never came. While Harry's crisis unfolded privately in California, another battle was unraveling inside William himself. One no phone call could stop. For years, he had carried the weight of history, duty, and expectation without complaint. But now, behind the polished royal smiles and practiced strength, his body had spoken louder than his voice ever could. And as aides scrambled to protect the palace, those closest to him began to ask, had this weight finally become too much to bear? The weight of legacy behind the illness. William's life had been a mirror of 3 monarchs, Diana, Charles, and Elizabeth II, each casting a different kind of shadow. Born in 1982, he lost his mother in 1997, stood behind her coffin at age 15, and by 21 was already labeled the future king. The public saw poise. But inside, those closest to him saw exhaustion, an emotional erosion built over decades. A former classmate once remarked, "William's smile was always real, but it never reached his eyes." His military years, especially 2009 to 2013 as an RAF rescue pilot, were the only time he felt truly free. Flying into danger zones in Anglesey, saving lives anonymously, brought him joy few understood. But even then, the pressure never left. He was always Prince William, even in uniform. His superiors recalled he worked longer hours than expected, took extra shifts, and never asked for special treatment. Yet behind closed doors, he rarely spoke. He carried it all, one aide said, and he never put it down. After Queen Elizabeth's death in 2022, responsibility hit harder. Public appearances doubled. State dinners, international tours, charity events, all multiplied. He took on 14 patronages and made 132 official appearances in 2023 alone. Aides pleaded with him to slow down. "I'm fine," he'd reply. But Catherine noticed the changes. Less sleep, missed meals, weight loss. She would leave reminders on his desk. "Take a break." He never did. "There's no time," he would say. "They need me." Doctors now believe the illness had been developing quietly. It wasn't one moment, but years of unspoken stress. Palace insiders say the diagnosis wasn't just physical. It was a culmination of invisible scars. His health crisis wasn't a betrayal of strength, but a reflection of how deeply he gave himself to the crown. As one of his private secretaries stated, he wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to hold it all together. For everyone. With William's condition forcing the royal household into uncertain territory, practical questions could no longer wait. The palace, long trained in ceremony and routine, now had to face contingency. Behind locked doors, advisors began crafting plans never meant to be used so soon. The question was no longer if, but how. If William were unable to fulfill duties temporarily or longer, who would carry the crown's responsibilities? And would the public accept that shift without losing trust in the institution? The future of the crown in question. Emergency meetings were called the very next day at Sandringham House, led by senior royal courtiers and the Lord Chamberlain. The topic? Succession structure. If William couldn't perform his duties, even temporarily, who would act as public face of the monarchy? Prince George, only 12 years old, was obviously not ready. That left Catherine, and while no law made her the official heir, public sentiment and palace trust had already moved in that direction. Privately, the phrase transitional monarchy began circulating, a term not heard since Edward VIII's abdication in 1936. But this wasn't abdication. This was duty redistributed. Aides debated whether Catherine should assume more ceremonial responsibilities, attending state functions, signing documents, overseeing royal patronages. Already she had been stepping into the vacuum, meeting foreign dignitaries, coordinating with Downing Street, and holding private briefings with the Archbishop of Canterbury. One advisor admitted, "It's not official." But everyone's already treating her as the acting monarch. In Parliament, murmurs rose. Members requested clarification from the palace about the line of command. Would Catherine speak at the upcoming Remembrance Day ceremonies? Would she lead the state opening of Parliament? The palace, tight-lipped, offered no comment, but internally, preparations had begun. Royal aides began updating her security detail, speechwriting staff, and public relations team. For the first time, Catherine's team was issued access to the Crown Room at Windsor, a symbolic shift, if there ever was one. Public opinion had already made its choice. A recent YouGov poll conducted within 48 hours of William's diagnosis showed 84% support for Catherine taking temporary leadership. Newspapers dubbed her the People's Queen in Waiting. Headlines read, "Steady hands, strong heart." Across the realm, trust wasn't faltering. It was being redirected. And even those who had once questioned the monarchy's relevance found themselves moved by Catherine's calm, quiet rise. With the future of the monarchy already shifting into Catherine's hands, the mood across the United Kingdom entered something rare. Collective pause. Not panic, not outrage, but reverent stillness. Because now, the question wasn't simply about power or protocol. It was about love, family, and the uncertain path ahead. As citizens lit candles and gathered in silence, a single truth began to form. Whether William recovered or not, the monarchy had already changed. And Catherine was now its guiding force. A nation holds its breath. On the evening of October 30th, cities across the United Kingdom transformed. From Belfast to Birmingham, Glasgow to Greenwich, candlelight vigils sprung up like wildflowers after rain. In town squares, small gatherings formed without invitation. Some sang hymns, others stood in silence. In Yorkshire, a local band played Jerusalem. In London's Trafalgar Square, 2,000 people held phones lit to the sky. No one told them to come. They just did. Because grief and hope move people in ways laws never could. At Windsor Castle, Catherine tucked in her children. She read George a chapter from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and held Charlotte's hand until she fell asleep. Then she sat alone at the foot of her bed, staring at a framed photo. William holding Louis in Kensington Gardens, laughing. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She was now more than a wife. She was the steadying force of an entire kingdom. King Charles, who had remained largely out of view since his emotional address, was seen alone in the palace chapel, head bowed before the same altar where Queen Elizabeth II once prayed during World War II bombings. A staff member recalled, it wasn't just prayer, it was a passing of something, a letting go. He lit 3 candles, one for duty, one for family, and one simply for William. In a small village pub in Cornwall, a man raised his pint and said, "To the only royal I ever trusted." No one clapped. They just nodded, because that sentiment echoed across millions of hearts. The country didn't just fear losing a prince. They feared losing a piece of themselves. And as night settled in, one silent question stretched across the aisles. Will our future king rise again? As the world processes this devastating news, one truth becomes clear. Prince William is more than a royal figure. He is the heart of a nation in waiting. While the palace remains guarded in details, the weight of uncertainty now rests on Catherine, their children, and the hopes of millions. This isn't just a personal health crisis. It's a constitutional storm in slow motion. And yet, amid the worry, a powerful message emerges. Resilience, love, and duty still bind the crown. We will continue to follow every development, because this story is not just news. It's the future unfolding before our eyes.